how to hear God's voice, how to listen to His voice. Is God's voice even real? Like, how do we know it's real? My name is Verian. I'm a missionary here with YOM, Youth with a Mission, here in Asunción, Paraguay, South America. If you've never been here, come check it out. We train young people, we send them out to the nations, we send them out to Paraguay, we help them how to do evangelism, preach the gospel, plant churches, small groups, do acts of justice and compassion, a little bit of everything. Today, we're going to talk about how to hear God's voice, or more specifically, different ways of hearing God's voice. And today, our guest speaker is Brah. Welcome, Brah. Welcome back. Very excited for today. The question is like, hearing God's voice is like, it raises so many different ideas and questions, like from different people and denominations, organizations, like even in YOM, like we have sometimes different understandings and ideas of hearing God's voice. So I think to start off, it would be very good if you could just like give us some, I don't know, let's say some very practical ways how we can hear God's voice. And with that same question, how do we know it's God's voice and it's not just our own imagination or an idea that we have or whatever?
Yeah, I think hearing God's voice is very important, obviously. And you mentioned like, oh, we have all the organizations and denominations and the way they believe about it. I think hearing God's voice, there's not anyone in the world that doesn't believe, or Christian, that doesn't believe that God speaks.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That is the thing that sets the living God apart from all the fake ones.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Isaiah talked about that. You know, you guys serve a deaf and dumb God,
Yeah.
but our God is alive. You know, Elijah stood on Mount Carmel watching them trying to do things, and he goes, my God is the God who answers.
Yeah.
You know, Samuel, right? His name means the God who speaks or the God who answers. So we serve the living God. We were created by Him to represent Him and live in relationship with Him.
Mm-hmm.
There's no relationship without communication.
Yeah.
Right? If I would just never talk to Sheldry, never communicate, no verbal, nonverbal, just no communication, there's no relationship.
Yeah.
So there's people that say, well, God communicates only through the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And because everything's in the Bible. Well, reality is it's not. There's a lot of guidance in the Bible, and you can apply the principles of the Bible to your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
But there's going to be moments in your life you're like, oh, I need help. You're like, I don't know what to do. And God is the one who speaks, right? So I think, first of all, you know, it's not a controversial subject.
Mm-hmm.
And if you read the Bible, they all talk to God and they hear God. If you read history, just amazing thing how God interacts with people from, from the Bible stories to just church history.
Yeah.
Right? From people that are not very known of hearing God's voice, like a Martin Luther, but he did hear God's voice, and it became the Reformation. John Knox, that started the Presbyterian Church.
Yeah.
Presbyterians are not, quote unquote, famous for hearing God's voice, but if you read the stories of John Knox, it's amazing how God spoke and how he spoke on behalf of God as like in a prophetic way. So I think it's normal Christianity. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, first of all, very important to establish. I'm created by God to represent Him. I'm the physical creation of the spirit. I'm the physical representation of the spiritual God in His physical creation. So I am created and I live, and it's my identity to live in relationship with God, which includes communication, both ways.
Yeah. No, that's very good. I'm very glad you clarify that, right? And even me, like coming from a background where, same way as you said, not very known for walking out, right? But we as like Mennonites, we wouldn't be here if we wouldn't have listened to God's voice, right? We wouldn't have survived in the Chaco if we wouldn't have listened to God's voice. So I think it's everyone, like you said, everyone. We serve a living God, and we communicate with Him, we talk with Him. That's how relationship works, right? So thank you so much for clarifying that. First of all, I really appreciate that. Could you give us maybe like some practical ways how God speaks to us? Because He is a personal God, so I believe He speaks in different ways to us. Could you maybe give us some practical
I
examples?
think we have to start with the Bible, right? It's obviously you read the Bible, and if you're a good Christian, you read it all the time.
Yes.
And you read through the whole Bible, Genesis through Revelation.
Come on.
Not just short little verses randomly through the Bible. You read through the whole Bible. And you can read the same book, the same passage 10 times, and it feels like you find 10 times something new in it, right? And I believe that is what the Lord does with the Word. You read it, and the Holy Spirit just highlights stuff in it. And out of nowhere, out of the exact same story you read 100 times, now you get another lesson. So it's a combination of the Word with the Spirit that really brings the Bible alive, and it's a way for the Lord to talk to us. So I think that is very important. Also, the Bible is our plumb line, right? The Bible is the set absolute truth.
Yeah.
So when we talk about, oh, I heard God say, and people say, God told me to do this, and it's something that is against the Bible, that was not God.
From God.
God is not going to go against His own word, right? But then there's stuff in the Bible you hope He would never say to anyone today, right? Like a prophet walk around naked in the city.
Yeah.
Like,
don't want to see that.
so there we have something that's biblical.
Yeah.
But don't do it. Don't do it, please. Right? So you always have to have the Word and the Spirit, the Spirit and the Word. And I think some people, it's as easy as God speaking through their thoughts. It's just a thought that comes up. And it's a thought that you recognize, where did that came from? You know? And of course, you know, we all have had bad thoughts, right? And you're like, why am I thinking about this bad thing? And I think sometimes the devil tries to get bad thoughts in our minds, right? But also God, like God speaks to you. You know, sometimes I remember we went to do evangelism in a city, I think it was in Missouri in the U.S. And I would go pray at night, and I go pray. And every time when I start praying, this thought came in my mind of Mary and a Mary statue. And I'm like, I rebuke this in Jesus' name. This is not right. Like, and I've been like really struggling, you know, and I'm like, God, what? And I try to pray again, and this thing comes again. And I finally am like, God, what's going on? Like, speak to me. And He goes, I've been trying, but you keep on rebuking it, you know. And I realized, oh, wait, and He was pointing me to a problem that was there in the region. So the next day we went to the local church. I'm like, hey, is there, like, you know, the thing that comes to my mind all the time is a Mary shrine. Is there anything here? And they're like, oh, yeah, we have a massive Mary shrine in the city. And at their graveyard, they had a Mary appearance in a tree that was like famous. People would come, like, travel there, and it was a point of idolatry, right? So as I was praying for the city, God was trying to use my thoughts to speak to me. And that's the way God can speak to us, right? Other thing is an image, right? You know, when I close my eyes and I say a red ball, I can actually imagine seeing a red ball, right? All of us, we can do that. And that area in our mind, sometimes you get an image, you're like, what is that? You know, and we can say, oh, you know, I get these bad images. And a lot of times we believe the devil can speak to us like that, or the devil can do that, but we forget God can use that same area to show us images and guide us in our prayer, et cetera, you know. And then our feelings, right? I think one of the things we forget about is we feel stuff, like emotionally. So, for example, I remember walking into a store, and I had a very good day, but I walked in the store, and I felt like depressed, frustrated, and I'm like, okay, what happens? And you walk out the store, and you're fine, And then you can think, well, there's maybe some bad music in there. It's the devil. Like we always go back to him.
Yes, immediately.
And but I walk back in the store and I look around and I see a person that looks like they're feeling what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And I go over to them and I'm like, do you feel like this and this and this? And they go, yeah, how do you know? And it wasn't the devil oppressing me. It was the Lord showing me, hey, there's somebody here that feels like this. And now since I know, I can say, well, God told me or showed it to me. Can I pray for you?
Yeah.
Right? And it creates opportunity for me to take my priestly role as a believer to be the connection between God and somebody that's disconnected but needs desperately a connection with him.
Yeah.
So that's a way. And then our senses, right? That is in the Bible, right? I think that might be a good one to pull up. Is that okay if I pull up the Bible?
100%, yes.
If you go to the book of Hebrews, it has this funny verse. And it says, come on. Technology is awesome when it works. It says this, but solid food belongs to those who are full of age or mature. That is, those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil. And here the writer of Hebrews is talking to the believers like, hey, by the time, like you guys have been Christians for so long, you should be teachers by now, but you're still acting like babies. Like what the heck is wrong, right? It's kind of a rebuke. And then he talks about solid food, like babies drink milk, but solid food, steak, right, is for the mature. And then he goes, solid food belongs to those who are mature. And then he says, that is those who by reason of use, having their senses exercised to discern both good and evil. Well, this is Hebrews 5, verse 14, so you can look it up at home. What does this mean? If I get an egg that's rotten, and I give it to Nina, she's 5 years old, right?
Yeah.
And she holds the egg, and then she pops it. It will make a different sound. You ever popped a rotten egg? It goes like, boom, like there's pressure in it, And when you have that, you're like, oh no. And then the smell comes. And then if she would stick it in her mouth, she'd be like, like this is bad. So she hears the difference, she smells the difference, and she go, Dad, this is bad.
Yeah.
Does that make her a mature Christian? Because based on this verse, it says, those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil are mature, right?
Yeah.
No, that doesn't make her mature. It's not talking about physical senses here, right? The context is mature as a Christian and mature in your spiritual walk. So what it talks about is your spiritual senses. Well, what are those? Well, let's go to the Bible. You can hear God's voice. People see visions, the fragrance of the Lord, right? There's spiritual fragrance. Like even in heaven, there's incense going around, right? The bowl of the prayers. We have touch. You can feel the touch of the Lord. And taste. Well, taste is the spiritual taste. Yeah, actually in the Bible, it talks about this prophet eating the scroll. And it says, it tastes sweet in his mouth, but it's bitter to the stomach. So that is all spiritual sensing, right? Through spiritual senses, which are the same 5 as our physical.
Yeah.
So sometimes what I'm experiencing in my senses is not physical, right? So I can be praying for people, and then I pray for somebody, and they have a very nasty sulfur smell. Yeah. Have you ever had that?
Yeah.
And you're like, what did I eat? Is it the person? And I realize sometimes you smell that, and it's the demonic, right?
Yeah.
And like, oh, this is happening. Or I remember one time I was in a place and there was a preaching going on and just a time of worship, and I smelled this like cinnamon, vanilla, just awesome smell, right? And I'm thinking, yes, after this service, we're gonna have some good food. And at the end of this thing, there was no food. And I'm like, this was really odd. Like, and I'm like, what was that? Like, I smelled like donuts or cinnamon rolls. Like, And they're like, no, there is nothing. Like we were, and then one of the girls raised her hand. She goes, I was smelling the exact same thing. Like, and I realized, like, you know, it was the presence of God. Like it was nice, and it was a smell. Well, that's weird.
Yeah.
But it's God communicating, like, I'm here, or whatever God's reason is to do that, right?
Yeah.
So it can be to bring discernment, and it can be to just know that He's there.
Yeah.
Right. So this can happen through hearing. You know, I'm not really a person that like hears out loud. But, you know, I've heard people like, they go like, did you hear the trumpet? And I'm like, trumpet? And they're like, you didn't hear the trumpet? I'm like, no. And they go, I really, and they're like, oh, the Lord, this was something spiritual. And then they realize God was communicating to them, right?
Wow.
Or people that see visions, like an open vision, right? In the Bible, we have full of them, and you get to know people, and they're like, I had like an open vision. I saw Jesus, right? Like, wow.
Yeah.
Right. That's like my dream. I would love to see Jesus walk in here and end this podcast and just sit there and wonder, you know.
Yes, please.
But they're all things that happen, right? And they're all ways of God being able to communicate to us. So we can't say it's only the Bible. We can't say it's only in our mind. We can't say it's only hearing, right? It's only seeing. No, it's a combination of the same way we communicate in the physical realm, and we you know, like when you have a little baby, right, Shiloh?
Yeah.
You smell her?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, and it's so cute.
Yes.
And it's a form of communication. Like that's my baby girl, right? Thank God we're not like dogs, because they take it to another level, the communication through smell. But we do that ourselves. Right? We do that. We if we miss somebody really bad, and you have a T-shirt that has the smell of that person, like that's really nice. I met a person that every time her husband travels, she takes one of his shirts, put it in a Ziploc bag so it doesn't lose the smell. And then when she feels you misses him a lot, she takes him out as like, you can say, well, that's weird, but it's a way of it's part of who we are. We smell things, we taste, and in the spiritual realm, it's the same.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. That's a lot of very good practical ways on how to hear God's voice, because I think a lot of times we don't really understand. Is it God? Is it actual cinnamon rolls? Is it actual donuts, right? Like we cannot really, we don't really understand how to deal with it. So my question with this would be like, how do you know it's God's voice? For example, you smelled cinnamon and vanilla. How do you know it's God's voice and it's not your stomach telling you, I need some cinnamon rolls, go to Krispy Kreme or whatever?
Well, for me, until the other person was like, I smelled the same thing, I had no idea it was something beyond
spiritual?
Actually somebody cooking, or I'm just weird. Right? But you realize there's a confirmation, like, hey, I had the exact same thing. For example, the feeling in the store, right? I didn't know if it was God. It could have been the devil. It could have been just me, right? But the moment I actually stop and go like, okay, God, is this you, right? And then you start looking around. And then I found the confirmation when I actually found that person. And when I shared, there was still a risk. I didn't know. I just said, hey, do you feel like that? I'm not going to say, hey, God told me, because I don't even know yet. So I'm just asking. And when she confirmed, yes, I'm like, then this was the Lord, right? And then I said, God showed me. Because so I think the way to do this is realize, hey, I'm a physical and spiritual person. I have a relationship with God. I should walk in two worlds at the same time, spiritual realm and the physical realm. And as I walk through my life, I need to realize I'm getting triggered spiritually and physically. I see things, I hear things, I smell things, I experience things. And as a Christian, we grow how? It says here, by the reason of use. In other words, I actually practice using it.
That's good.
So I feel something. Okay, is this me, God, or the devil? Right? I actually try to pause, you know, like in the Psalms, like pause, Selah. Okay, is this God? Is this me? And by reason of use, you start realizing it and you grow in it, and you will make mistakes. Sometimes you're like, I know God told me, but God never said anything, And it's okay to be wrong, because you're learning. We're students, right?
That's good.
One thing I do say is you have to be careful with telling people God told me, right? That can become really manipulative. Like if I walk over to somebody, you're single, and you find this really good-looking girl, and you're like, God told me to marry you, right? I don't like that stuff at all.
Yeah, that's
But
good.
if I believe God showed me, or, this person has pain in the knee. How? Because I actually saw, like, it looked like a thorn. Like some people see stuff, right? And then you go over like, hey, do you have a pain in your knee? It feels like a thorn sticking into your knee. And the person says no. Then you're like, well, God told me it's true, so you have that. Like, no, that's not how it works, right? You can be wrong. Maybe you're just making stuff up because you're trying to learn how to hear God's voice, and you're just giving it a go, right? I love a story of one lady I met. She's like, man, I would love to know people's names by hearing God's voice, because how special is it that to know that God knows you by name? So she would start saying, God, give me names. So she would just randomly on the street go, hey, John, and go up with whatever name would come up in her mind.
Oh, man.
And people go like, I'm not John. And she goes, oh, I'm sorry, just walk on. And she would say, God, I really would like to know people's names. And after a while, she'd be go, hey, what's up, Peter? And the guy goes, do I know you? And she goes, no, you don't, but God showed me your name because he cares about you and wants you to know he knows you by name. Jesus loves you.
Come
and
on.
she was able to preach the gospel to people. And she kept on pursuing this. And she ended up being right, like over 70% of the time, being able to pull random people on the street, right? And I'm like, this is amazing, right? She actually was like, I want to hear God's voice for others so they know he knows them by name.
Come on, that's amazing.
And I think most of us are not like her. When we want to find out about hearing God's voice, normally when we fall in love and want to know if it's the right one. Like we make hearing God's voice about us. Right? And she was like, man, if I can show people that God knows them by their name, and she made hearing God's voice in her life about the others. And I think that's amazing. And it would be, if you want to learn how to hear God's voice, maybe start practicing for somebody else and not for yourself. That it's not about you and your maybe boyfriend or girlfriend, but it's about somebody finding Jesus.
Come on, that's amazing. I love that. Those are some very good and practical ideas, right? So yeah, like you guys heard, the best way to do it, pray, ask God. Don't do it for yourself. But once he answers, you actually got to do it, because probably if God tells you, hey, start calling names on the sidewalk, it's going to be weird at first, for sure. You go up and you say, hey, Peter, and the guy's like, I know Peter, right? At first, it's going to feel awkward. It's going to feel weird. But like Bram said, like we read in Hebrews, like you gotta train it, you gotta do it, you gotta practice it, and that's the only way how you're gonna get better at it. So yeah, thank you so much, Bram. That was very helpful. Definitely learned a lot about hearing God's voice, how to hear God's voice, different ways of hearing God's voice, and I really hope and pray that the people that are listening, watching, that you guys you get the same, that you feel more confident now in hearing God's voice, or if not more confident, but that you know now where to start, how to hear God's voice, right? Because he is a relational God. He wants to speak to you. He wants to hear your voice even, right? So just start practicing, start doing it. And yeah, I'm very excited to hear what the Lord is going to do in your life. So yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Bram. Thank you guys for listening, for watching. I'm very excited for our next episodes that we're going to have on our podcast here, for the people that are going to come in, that we're going to talk about. And I hope I will hear and maybe see you at some point if you come here. But yeah, thank you so much for tuning in.